Welcome to the Synthesis of Yoga, the book that changed my life. We are studying Sri Aurobindo's The Synthesis of Yoga, the book that has synthesized the entire yogic tradition of India and given us the integral yoga. By the very act of reading, we are connecting to Sri Aurobindo's yogic consciousness and imbibing it and getting that vision of the infinite mind, the yogic mind. In our last episode, that was 108, we have seen the 9th chapter of part 1, paragraphs, first 3 paragraphs, where we saw the need in the yoga of works, because we are studying the part 1 of synthesis, yoga of divine works, and in the 9th chapter is equality and annihilation of ego. And in that last episode we saw how action can be driven by desire, and that desire has to be eliminated. Second, like desire for the fruits of action, the results of action. Second was attachment to the result. And third is effacement of the ego itself and attachment to the work itself, as well as the sense of doership. All these are to be progressively eliminated if we are to open to the divine will to act through us and experience its greater freedom. Now we are moving on to paragraph number 4. This is episode 109, and you will find the link in the description. Kindly follow the text so that we can enjoy it together. The very act of reading is our sadhana. The renunciation of attachment to the work and its fruit is the beginning of a wide movement towards an absolute equality in the mind and soul, which must become all-enveloping if we are to be perfect in the spirit. All-enveloping. So since this is not a yoga that renounces life and withdraws from life, this is a yoga that embraces life. In order to embrace our entire being, mental, vital being, it has to be an all-enveloping shift that we are looking at. An equality, establishing equality as a condition for that greater force to work. So the renunciation of attachment to the work and its fruit, that is what we have covered in the last episode. Renunciation of attachment to work itself and its fruit is the beginning of a wide movement. So that's a beginning. It's not an end in itself, but just a beginning of a wide movement towards an absolute equality in the mind and soul. Absolute equality in the mind and soul, which must become all-enveloping. So this equality that is in the mind and soul, it has to become all-enveloping if we are to be perfect in the spirit. So we are seeking that perfection in the spirit. 4. The worship of the Master of Works demands a clear recognition and a glad acknowledgement of Him in ourselves, in all things, and in all happenings. So the worship of the Master of Works requires this, a clear recognition. Not only recognition, a glad acknowledgement at 3 levels. One is within ourselves. Second is in all things that are around. Third is all happenings. A happening that involves things around as well as you. So in all happenings, everything that is around and in you, everywhere, we need to have a clear recognition and a glad acknowledgement of the master of the works. Equality is the sign of this adoration. It is the soul's ground on which true sacrifice and worship can be done. So it's a signature, it's a sign. Equality, development of equality is a sign of this adoration, because you are not the doer, it is that divine Shakti of the Master is working behind all things, moving everything, not you. You are only an instrument. Equality is the sign of this adoration. It is the soul's ground on which true sacrifice and worship can be done. So the sacrifice and worship is done on the ground of this soul, which is established in equality. The Lord is there equally in all beings. We have to make no essential distinction between ourselves and others. This is one of the biggest challenges. Our ego perceives ourselves to be separate. Others are others. There is a clear cognitive gap here. And our ego has to be trained that there is no essential distinction between ourselves and others. It's hard to believe, and yet this is the necessary training for the ego. Others are not separate, no matter how convincing it is for our cognitive system to tell us this is not so. Deeper truth is there is no essential difference. We have to make no essential distinctions between ourselves and others, the wise and the ignorant. Wise and the ignorant. Friend and enemy, man and animal, the saint and the sinner. Behind all the appearances is one being that is playing through everyone and everything. We must hate none, despise none, be repelled by none. For in all, we have to see the one, disguised or manifested at his pleasure. So the manifestation is seen as the divine's play. And many of these appearances are disguises of his pleasure. Elsewhere, Sri Aurobindo says, divine never takes his work seriously. A playful child, playful master, never taking things seriously, enjoying, creating all these weird masks for his pleasure in the play of this worldly game. We must hate none, despise none, be repelled by none. For in all we have to see the one, disguised or manifested. Disguised or manifested. That one divine presence, it may be manifest and visible in someone who has evolved to a divine status, whereas in someone else it is in disguise. So disguised or manifested at his pleasure. He is a little revealed in one or more revealed in another, or concealed or wholly distorted in others, according to his will and his knowledge of what is best for that which he intends to become, inform in them, and to do in works in their nature. So the divine is working through each individual, each creature according to their nature, and do works through them according to the possibilities of those instruments. Concealed or wholly distorted in others. according to his will and his knowledge. So the distortions that we see in the manifest world is not happening without the will and knowledge of the master of existence. Often this is when we see the darkness and evil in the world, we say, where is the divine in all this? Why did the divine approve? We often judge from our human moral constructs, and therefore we judge. But everything that is unfolding in the manifest world is with his will and his knowledge. Nothing happens without it. According to his will and his knowledge of what is best for that which he intends to become, in form in them, and to do in works in their nature. So each individual has a form and there is a work that that person is meant to do. In that context, what is the best possible, and the divine will and knowledge is behind it. It's hard to believe, yet that is the deeper truth Sri Aurobindo is showing us. He is a little revealed in one or more revealed in another, or concealed and wholly distorted in others, according to his will and his knowledge of what is best for that which he intends to become, in form in them, and to do it in works in their nature. All is ourselves, one self that has taken many shapes. There is one self that has taken many shapes. Now this point has to be repeated hundreds and hundreds of times. Like ancient Upanishad would say, Tattvamasi, you are that. Every form, every shape, everything in existence is nothing but that. Even when we hear this multiple times, still when it comes to our action, our interactions with life, there is I, me and myself, the sense of separation. This is something we need to consciously eradicate. Hatred and disliking and scorn and repulsion, clinging and attachment and preference are natural, necessary, inevitable at a certain stage. They attend upon, or they help to make and maintain nature's choice in us. There is nature's choice. Nature is the instrumental, manifest physical appearance and machinery of the divine. And nature has a choice in us. The divine is there who can override everything, but nature has her universal operations and her choices. So hatred and disliking and scorn and repulsion, clinging and attachment and preferences these are natural, necessary and inevitable at certain stage. So we are evolving and emerging in nature. And these operations are part of our evolutionary unfolding. Likes, dislikes, hatred, repulsion, scorn, clinging and attachment and preference. Natural, necessary, even inevitable. Imagine a time when we don't have the pleasure-pain reactions in our early stage of development. You put your foot on a thorn and you don't even realize that it is cutting your flesh. The body has to recoil and protect itself. So many of the mechanisms that we see in our biological system was part of our evolutionary process. And that gets transferred into our psychology. Therefore, attractions, repulsions, likes, dislikes, all that, they were necessary in our evolutionary journey at certain stage. Natural, necessary, inevitable at a certain stage. They attend upon, or they help to make and maintain nature's choice in us. Nature is propelling her evolutionary process, her subconscious yoga that has become conscious in us. And nature has made choices in various instruments of her operations. And we are her instruments, her laboratory, and she has made choices. Accordingly, we experience naturally clinging, attachment, preferences, repulsion, likes, dislikes, all that. But to the karma yogin, they are a survival, a stumbling block, a process of the ignorance. Capital I, ignorance. That is nature's mechanical workings. And as he progresses, they fall away from his nature. So for a karma yogin, when you are on the path of establishing equality and annihilating ego, in that process, you will discover all this luggage from the past of our evolutionary journey. They are survival. They have survived from the past. A stumbling block, and if they continue, they become a stumbling block. A process of the ignorance. And these are processes of lower nature, unconscious, habitual, mechanical nature, lower nature and her workings. And as he progresses, they fall away from his nature. So as you progress on the path of karma yoga, establishing equality, these tendencies, these habits fall away. The child soul needs them for its growth. The child soul. There is an evolving soul within us. There is a childhood of the soul. That childhood, child soul, needs them for its growth, protective machinery of nature. But they drop from an adult in the divine culture. So, as we evolve and become more adult souls, then these things drop off. In the God nature to which we have to rise, there can be an adamantine, even destructive severity, but not hatred. A divine irony, but not scorn. A calm, clear-seeing and forceful rejection, but not repulsion and dislike. So this is a classic confusion many people hold on to. When you turn to spiritual life, you are often playing the game of being in harmony, always love and harmony and sweetness and tenderness and gentleness. But yoga demands sometimes an adamantine and even destructive severity. We have to take even destructive, severe, adamantine action. But such action is not to be done from hatred. That's the difference. You can be adamantine, you can be destructive, you can be severe out of hatred. But how can you be adamantine, destructive and severe without hatred? That capacity must be there. And divine irony, but not scorn. That's another. Instead of having that scorn, having this sense of divine irony. A calm, clear seeing and forceful rejection. A capacity to reject forcefully if necessary. But doing it without repulsion and dislike. So we are eliminating the repulsion, dislike, hatred, scorn, all these are, but doesn't mean we become incapable of rejection, incapable of forceful action, incapable of destruction of what is no more necessary. So in God nature to which we have to rise, there can be an adamantine and even destructive severity, but not hatred, a divine irony, but not scorn, a calm, clear-seeing and forceful rejection, but not repulsion and dislike. Repulsion and dislike or hatred, all these are movements of the lower nature, habitual movements. Once we become conscious and develop equality, from that ground we can have forceful action, clear rejection, and even a destructive course of action. All that become possible. Even what we have to destroy, we must not abhor or fail to recognize as a disguised and temporary movement of the eternal. So even when we destroy something, we do it with full conscious recognition that this is a veil, a distorted covering of the eternal. And you as an instrument is given a work of destroying something that is not worthy of keeping in life. So it is about seeing behind the veil and yet acting decisively where it is necessary, destroying where it is necessary. Even when we have to destroy, we must not abhor or fail to recognize as a disguised and temporary movement of the eternal. So we see the eternal in disguise. And eternal is demanding, come on, step up, destroy this movement. And you gladly do it, surrender to it. And since all things are the one self in its manifestation, we shall have equality of soul towards the ugly and the beautiful, the maimed and the perfect, the noble and the vulgar, the pleasant and the unpleasant, the good and evil. All these dualities, we have to look at them with equality of the soul, because all things are one self in its manifestation, varying degrees of revelation or veiling or distortion. That's it. And since all things are in the one self in its manifestation, we shall have equality of soul towards the ugly and the beautiful, the maimed and the perfect, the noble and the vulgar, the pleasant and the unpleasant, the good and evil. Transcending the dualities requires arriving at equality, seeing the one in all things, yet be decisive where it is to be. Here also there will be no hatred, scorn, or repulsion, but instead the equal eye that sees all things in their real character and their appointed place. Every character in the game of the Leela that is being played on earth, everything has its appointed place and an appointed time. And we encounter the divine in many guises. Divine is at once shaping everyone and everything and propelling the whole towards grand revelation of the divine reality. In that, there are all these characters lined up. So here also, there will be no hatred, scorn, or repulsion, but instead the equal eye that sees all things in their real character and their appointed place. A function that the divine has appointed for each character in the game. For we shall know that all things express or disguise, develop or distort, as best they can or with whatever defect they must, under the circumstances intended for them. For every character, there's a circumstance intended. In that context, what are they doing? All things express or disguise, develop or distort, as best they can. So each entity is trying their best to express or disguise, develop or distort as best they can or with whatever defect they must under the circumstances intended for them. Each entity, each movement has its circumstance, its context. In that space, the best is always done in the way possible to the immediate status or function or evolution of their nature. some truth or fact, some energy or potential of the divine, necessary by its presence in the progressive manifestation, both to the whole of the present sum of things and for the perfection of the ultimate result. So the divine is keeping two things always in the perspective. One is the ultimate goal, ultimate result towards which the divine is progressively driving everything. In that movement, it is also holding the entirety of the cosmic movement and the universal figures and their operations to the best possible optimum revelation or veiling or distortion for each thing in its context, according to its possibility. We, our human perspective, cannot see it. But as we widen, as we begin to get a glimpse of this greater movement of oneself, then we begin to sense behind the veil the Master. For we shall know that all things express or disguise, develop or distort, as best they can or with whatever defect they must, under the circumstances intended for them, in the way possible to the immediate status or function or evolution of their nature, because each entity is evolving and there is a status or function that is there for each entity, evolution of their nature, some truth or fact, some energy or potential of the divine, because nothing is devoid of some grain of the divine behind it, no matter how much it is wrapped up in distortions and covered up by outer layers. There is always an element of deeper truth, necessary by its presence in the progressive manifestation, both to the whole of the present sum of things. So there is a present sum of things in which it is composed of all the parts, and each part is evolving and playing its role in the sum of the totality, as well as the perfection of the ultimate result towards which the whole is moving. So there is part, then there is a whole, and then there is the ultimate perfection and the result towards which the divine evolutionary process and force is moving everyone and everything. So each part has an appointed place, a function, a status, a truth, and evolutionary process, a context, and each one is expressing or distorting or veiling according to their possibility. That truth is what we must seek and discover behind the transitory expression. All these expressions are transitory, they come and go. Like in Buddhism, they would say, this too will pass. But it is not just coming and passing. Behind that transitory wave is the one eternal one self. That truth is what we must seek and discover behind the transitory expression, undeterred by appearances, by the deficiencies or the disfigurements of the expression, undeterred by appearances, by the deficiencies or disfigurement of the expression, because each evolving entity is expressing, regardless of the disfigurement of the expression, deficiency of the expression, regardless of the appearances. We need to look deeper to see the one behind all things. We can then worship the divine forever, unsullied, pure, beautiful, and perfect behind his mask. Then alone we can enjoy this worship of the oneself behind the manifold expressions of endless variety. There is oneself playing in these worlds, through all these disguises, all these masks, seeing behind the mask, behind the distortion, to see, here you are, here is your intention, here is how you are shaping things. even through the worst character according to our human moral, ethical constraint or judgments. All indeed has to be changed. Not ugliness accepted, but divine beauty. So here comes the other dimension. We become equal doesn't mean that we accept ugliness and crudeness and violence. All indeed has to be changed. Not ugliness accepted, but divine beauty. Not imperfection taken as our resting place, but perfection striven after. The supreme good made the universal aim and not evil. So in the name of equality, we are not accepting ugliness, imperfection, or evil. We have to see that all this must change towards divine beauty, perfection, and supreme good. This transformation must be kept always in our perception, in our approach to any action. When we make the error that everything is nothing but the divine soul, let everything be as it is, that is tamasic approach. That's not what is intended. Everything must change. Everything must evolve and progress towards divine beauty, universal good, supreme good, and perfection. This must be our continuous aspiration. But what we do has to be done with a spiritual understanding and knowledge. And it is a divine good, beauty, perfection, pleasure that has to be followed after, not the human standards of these things. So remember the prefix divine, good, beauty, perfection, pleasure. There is also human, moral, ethical, good, beauty, perfection, pleasure. We need to distinguish between the human dimension and the divine dimension. We are aspiring to move from the human to the divine. So it is not the human standards to be followed, but the divine standards to be followed. That's what we have learned in our earlier chapter, Codes of Conduct. What we do has to be done with a spiritual understanding and knowledge. And it is a divine good, beauty, perfection, pleasure that has to be followed after, not the human standards of these things. So our ability to distinguish between human standards and the divine impulsions and demands, this is absolutely crucial. And this emerges with the emergence of the psychic being. Psychic being discerns and recognizes and follows up, surrenders. If we have not equality, it is a sign that we are still pursued by the ignorance. If the equality is not established, it's a very clear indication. We are pursued by the ignorance. We shall truly understand nothing, and it is more than likely that we shall destroy the old imperfection only to create another. And we see this continuously happening in the name of social revolutions. Revolutionaries come, destroy the past, and establish themselves only to discover that they have recreated a new limitation, a new falsehood in the place of the old. Because we operate from the human, moral, ethical notions. This is the limitation of the human mind. If we have not equality, it is a sign that we are still pursued by the ignorance. We shall truly understand nothing, and it is more than likely that we shall destroy the old imperfection only to create another. For we are substituting the appreciations of our human mind and desire soul for the divine values. So we confuse between divine values and our human desire soul. Our human mind and desire soul. Desire soul is our frontal emotional being and its sensibilities and its needs and its preferences and its standards. We confuse it for the divine values. We substitute the divine values with our mental constructs and desire soul's preferences. That should not be. For we are substituting the appreciations of our human mind and desire soul for the divine values. Equality does not mean a fresh ignorance or blindness. It does not call for and need not initiate a grayness of vision and a blotting out of all hues. Here is Sri Aurobindo's subtle humor. Grayness of vision. In the name of yoga, we are blotting out the colors and creating a grayness of vision. Uniform, monochrome, gray everywhere. Equality does not mean a fresh ignorance or blindness. It does not call for and need not initiate a grayness of vision and a blotting out of all hues. Diversity, colors, colorful richness, all these are part of the divine creation. It is not to be grayed out. Difference is there, variation of expression is there, and this variation we shall appreciate far more justly than we could when the eye was clouded by a partial and erring love and hate, admiration and scorn, sympathy and antipathy, attraction and repulsion. That's our normal human nature operating from the mind and emotional being. It goes through this attraction, repulsion, sympathy, antipathy, admiration, scorn, love, hate. And these things cloud and cover. That's our normal human perception. When we transcend these things and establish an equality, samatha, then only we are able to appreciate the difference, the diversity, the play of extreme differences, extremities that divine creates in the grand synthesis towards which it is moving. Difference is there, variation of expression is there, and this variation we shall appreciate far more justly than we could when the eye was clouded by a partial and erring love and hate, admiration and scorn, sympathy and antipathy, attraction and repulsion. But behind the variation, we shall always see the complete and immutable. The complete and immutable. Both have capital C and capital I here. Both have capitals. Complete and immutable, that one being who is behind all things, who dwells within it, and we shall feel, know, or at least, if it is hidden from us, trust in the wise purpose and divine necessity. Even if we cannot see, at least begin to trust there is a divine necessity, therefore things are the way it is. Not to judge from our human moral standards and perceptions. Trust in the wise purpose and divine necessity of the particular manifestation, whether it appear to our human standards harmonious and perfect, or crude and unfinished, or even false and evil. So the real shift has to be made between our human standards to divine standards. Otherwise, we tend to judge from moral, mental constructs. But behind the variation, we shall always see the complete and immutable, unchanging divine. Complete and immutable, who dwells within it, and we shall feel, know, or at least, if it is hidden from us, trust in the wise purpose and divine necessity of the particular manifestation. because there are many manifestations. It is one of them presenting itself in front of you as a distortion, as falsehood, as evil. And it has its reason, and behind all that veil is the one immutable being. Of the particular manifestation, whether it appear to our human standards harmonious and perfect, or crude and unfinished, or even false and evil. So whatever be these appearances, we must see the immutable one behind all this. And so too, we shall have the same equality of mind and soul towards all happenings, painful or pleasurable, defeat or success, honor or disgrace, good repute or ill repute, good fortune or ill fortune, evil fortune. So one thing is looking at all things around, other is all happenings, happenings that involves many things. And this might appear from our perspective painful or pleasurable, defeat or success, honor or disgrace, good repute or ill repute, good fortune or ill fortune, whatever it is. All happenings, behind all happenings, there is that one immutable self, complete presence. It is behind, veiled, distorted by the outer coverings of physical, vital, mental formations. Deep within, behind, is the Isha Vasyam Idam Sarva. That is a vision towards which a yogi has to move, a karma yogi has to move. Isha Vasyam Idam Sarva. Behind the veil is that one inhabitant. For in all happenings we shall see the will of the Master of all works and results, and a step in the evolving expression of the divine. So it's an evolving expression. It's not a finished work. We human beings are work in progress. The world is a work in progress, an evolution still in the making. It is never a finished work. So for in all happenings we shall see the will of the Master of all works and results, and a step in the evolving expression of the divine. He manifests himself to those who have the inner eye that sees. So the divine who is behind the mask, he will be manifesting himself to those who have the inner eye that sees. It's not our outer physical eye, but the inner eye that sees. In forces and their play and the results, as well as in things and creatures. So when you have that inner vision open, you see the forces at play. Forces and their play and results, as well as in things and in creatures. There are things, there are creatures, and through them all there are forces playing out, creating results. So you begin to see the forces at play behind the appearances. All things move towards divine event. All things move towards divine event. Each experience, suffering and want, no less than joy and satisfaction, is a necessary link in the carrying out of a universal movement, which it is our business to understand. And second, as a seeker, our role is to figure this out. It is our business to understand, not only understand, and second, support it. And what are we understanding and supporting? All things move towards divine event. This has to be our unwavering choice, mindset, faith. All things move towards a divine event. So, in that context, each experience, suffering and want, no less than joy and satisfaction, is a necessary link in the carrying out of a universal movement. The movement is universal. And each thing is a link building up the grand symphony of evolution in which we are involved. which it is our business to understand. And second, to revolt, to condemn, to cry out is the impulse of our unchastened and ignorant instincts. So when we are not awake, when we are not conscious, when we are not able to see beyond the appearances, that's when we revolt, condemn, or cry out. That's a clear sign that we are not able to see the divine in things, happenings, inside, outside. We are lost. That's when we revolt, we condemn, we cry out. Revolt, like everything else, has its use in the play, and it is even necessary. So Sri Aurobindo is not saying never ever revolt. It's not a mechanical mental rule he is giving. Revolt, like everything else, has its uses and in the play and is even necessary. Helpful, decreed for the divine development in its own time and stage. But the movement of an ignorant rebellion belongs to the stage of the soul's childhood or to its raw adolescence. So there is rebel without a cause. That's not is expected from a seeker. There is an adulthood of the soul. During childhood and adolescence, raw adolescence, there is this rebellion born out of ignorance. But as an adult soul, if you are revolting, it has to come from that calm, equanimous space of clarity, perception, choice. Unshaken, no emotional reactions. Revolt, like everything else, has its uses in the play and is even necessary. Helpful, decreed for the divine development in its own time and stage. But the movement of an ignorant rebellion belongs to the stage of the soul's childhood or to its raw adolescence. The ripeness of the ripened soul does not condemn but seeks to understand and master. That's the difference. An unripe soul, unbaked soul, child soul, adolescent revolting soul, there is the tendency to condemn. Whereas a ripened soul doesn't condemn. You seek to understand. First is to understand why this distortion, why this falsehood, why this force, why this veil. You want to understand. That is step number one. Then comes ability to master. I want to master it because you're playing with the divine. Behind the mask is the divine. Does not cry out but accept or toil to improve and perfect. Does not revolt inwardly but labors to obey and fulfill and transfigure. So these are the ways a matured soul works. Does not cry out but accepts or toils to improve and perfect. You simply don't revolt and reject. You toil, you work hard to improve things. And we can see people who are always complaining about things that are around, people that are around, systems that are around, situations that are around, complaining without any effort to improve anything that is within their reach. That is the ignorant form of condemnation. That is not the way for a seeker, a yogin. The ripened soul does not condemn but seeks to understand and master, does not cry out but accepts or toils to improve and perfect, does not revolt inwardly but labors to obey and fulfill and transfigure. So inwardly there is no revolt, but there is a labor to obey and fulfill and transfigure by opening to the divine will and its light and its force. That is what enabled the transformation. Therefore, we shall receive all things with an equal soul from the hands of the Master. Failure we shall admit as a passage as calmly as success until the hour of the divine victory arrives. So there will be failures on the way. There will be success on the way. Both are accepted with equality. Failure we shall admit as a passage as calmly as success, until the hour of the divine victory arrives. We never cease from striving for victory. No matter how many times there are failures, no matter how many success, we don't pause. We keep going till the divine victory arrives. Our souls and minds and bodies will remain unshaken by acutest sorrow and suffering and pain if in the divine dispensation they come to us, unoverpowered by the intensest joy and pleasure. So that's the level of equality we are to establish. Our souls and minds and bodies, will remain unshaken by acutest sorrow and suffering and pain if in the divine dispensation they come to us. We have taken up yoga, path of this transformation, doesn't mean divine will not bring such challenges. In the divine dispensation, it may be brought to our life, and divine knows its reason. Our role is not to be shaken by anything. Unoverpowered by intensest joy and pleasure. Even intensest joy and pleasure, they should not be overpowering, as well as the acutest sorrow, suffering, and pain. That's the kind of equality we are looking at. Thus, supremely balanced, we shall continue steadily on our way, meeting all things with an equal calm until we are ready for a more relaxed, more exalted status and can enter into the supreme and universal Ananda. So from equality, we can ascend to a more exalted state of universal Ananda, supreme universal Ananda. That possibility. So thus supremely balanced, we shall continue steadily. So arriving at equality is just an establishing of the baseline. We will continue steadily on our way with equality, meeting all things with equal calm until we are ready for a more exalted status. So there are exalted statuses than this calm equality. There is higher states built on equality, exalted status, and can enter into the supreme and universal Ananda, Ananda of the divine. We can open to it. But in order to open to it, this calm equality is the foundation. Without it, the descent of the vast Ganga will not be possible. The descent of the Shakti and her delight cannot be received into an instrument that gets shaken, a nervous system that gets tensed up, a nervous system that wants to throw out, a nervous system that breaks down, a body that breaks down. We need calm equality of the entire being. So our souls and minds and bodies will remain unshaken by acutest sorrow and suffering and pain if in the divine dispensation they come to us, unoverpowered by intensest joy and pleasure. Thus supremely balanced, we shall continue steadily on our way, meeting all things with an equal calm until we are ready for a more exalted status and can enter into the supreme and universal Ananda. Universal Ananda is waiting for a Karma Yogin, this freedom and delight of the Supreme Being. That is what we are aspiring for, to unite with. With this beautiful picture, we are coming to the end of this episode. Thank you for being with me in this journey. I hope you're enjoying. Please do share your insights, your inspiration, your suggestions. Looking forward to see you and walk together. Thank you.